one, and now we'll just go. In 3. Welcome home, Raiders. This week, Garrosh goes down in both 10 and 25 man. General Nazgrim might not be considered LFR progression anymore, and we talk race to world first and a lot more with our special guest. This is Convert to Raid number 114.
You're listening to Convert to Raid.
Convert to Raid.
The podcast for Raiders in the world of Warcraft.
I'm also called Zug around Airy Peak, US. Raiding with the old Resto Druid still, and the players are here. Let's go to beautiful Beantown, to Boston. You know from Convert to Raid 2. It's Gary's. Hello. How are you doing?
I'm good. Not so beautiful Beantown today. It's raining a little bit, but as you can see, I've got Sox jersey on, my playoff gear going on. It's playoff baseball.
Playoffs! Yeah, it's been a while since we've had that in Minnesota. Anyway, let's go out to let's go out to La La Land. Out to our Raging Mage, Coltrane. Hello, sir.
Fortune cookies say,
Oh, boy.
man who rely on spell check end up with cubic speaking. I mean, that's public.
Oh, dear. That was not good.
It's pubic.
Yeah. No, I got it. Got it. I got it. I don't want
They
it.
said they can't hear.
They can't hear.
They say that this show, the music's been way too loud.
Oh, man.
They said, someone just said, I can't hear the fortune cookie. Not sure if grateful for that or not. That's what Kel said.
Probably not. That's what I'm guessing. You should be able to hear that. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. I turn down the damn music every time, and it's still too loud.
They said they couldn't hear the fortune cookie at all. They couldn't even hear you in the intro.
What?
First he screws up the intro, then the fortune cookie.
And then he screws up the intro.
What?
And then he screws up my intro, which is the bigger offense.
They said they couldn't hear a thing. They
Who
want
is
me to
saying
repeat
this?
the cookie.
Who is saying this?
The whole chat room.
No. Ugh.
They want to hear the
speaking
fortune
volumes
cookie
was
again.
non-existent. All right, I got to do it
I don't know
again.
that I want to hear the fortune cookie again.
Yeah.
Right.
But
That's
I
right.
mean,
Right. I don't know if I would do either.
Fortune cookies say,
Oh, boy.
man who rely on spell check end up with pubic speaking.
And
But
again, I'll just
yeah,
say no.
It's
It's
better,
supposed to be public speaking.
Right.
better when we couldn't hear it.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
incorrect.
It was better when nobody could hear it.
I'm sorry. That's not correct.
We have some ellipses going on. Dots.
Ooh,
Just,
yeah. I got some. Somebody just said not worth it.
Yeah,
do we go back to loud music?
exactly. That's why we played the
Turn
music over the top.
back on.
Right, exactly. Hey, by the way, we do have a special guest straight off of the U.S. first kill of Garrosh Hellscream in heroic mode from Blood Legion. It's Affinitii. Hello, Affinitii. Well,
hi.
how are you?
I'm okay. You know.
Are you feeling
Going.
rested? I mean, aside
yet,
from that
you know.
fortune cookie, are you feeling okay?
Come on.
I think that set me back a little bit, but
Yes.
you know,
Right.
I'll get over it.
Yeah.
That's
well,
your reward for killing the rocks on heroic. A wonderful fortune cookie.
That's
Wonderful fortune cookie.
That's your reward. Can I get a new reward, please?
That was sent in by Ivory Tiger, by the way.
Woke up for this.
Yeah. It happens. It happens. And you know, Affinitii, you're in your robe, I see. You're
Got a
always,
new robe, actually. New robe for progression. It's a
Wow.
different one.
Wow. Look out.
His robe wraps around him like a giant bear holding a tiny baboon.
It's true.
Yeah.
That still doesn't make any sense.
No, it makes
but
no
okay.
sense whatsoever.
It's not supposed to make sense. It's provocative. Gets the people going.
It's not supposed to actually make sense. It's fine.
Affinity,
know.
congratulations, man. Holy cow.
Absolutely. To you
What
and the
leads
entire
in-
team.
Unbelievable.
That's craziness. And I know that we have a bunch of questions to ask you about that, and we're going to wait for it until we hit the Raiden news here. But first, I mean, Affinity, other than your big week in with Garrosh, now that Garrosh is down for you, what else have you been up to this week? As far as
Doing nothing. I mean, that's my post-progression ritual of catching up on 3 weeks of sleep and sitting here doing nothing, complaining about being bored.
I'm so bored because I'm just not going 17, 20-hour days
Yeah, it's
on
like
progression.
You kill Garrosh, and you're like, yeah, it's finally done, and then the following day you wake up and you're kind of like,
Great, now what?
now what?
Right.
What?
That's a good
now?
point, because you've been going so hard for so long into like, well, I guess we're done here. You know, that's true. That's got to be a real like, wait a minute.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
GTA. I would do GTA if they had it on the frickin' PC.
Yeah, really, get it out for the PC. Come on, because I would do that too. Let's talk to the other fellas here for just a second. Darius, what have you been up to?
Killing bad guys.
Yeah.
Been raiding quite a bit. We been clearing through Siege of Orgrimmar again.
Yeah.
Our team is we're only on normals, unlike Affinity's team. I think they just started heroics, so
Yeah, they just started.
yeah.
you
So
know, it's, you know,
we're doing.
casual.
Yeah,
We're currently working on Garage. We'll probably have him down tomorrow for normal at least. But we thought about calling it quits when we saw Method get the Garage kill, heroic Garage. I mean, we were right behind him. So
right. You were almost there.
we were so close.
Right.
No,
Another.
that was heroic, Darius.
Oh.
Heroic Garage, not normal.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Same thing, really. I mean,
Yeah, I mean it's the same fight. Whatever.
Right.
So we're doing that, and I just want a big shout out to the other CTR teams that are doing really well. It's cool to look at Airy Peak and see of the top 5 10-man raid teams, 4 of them are convert to raid teams. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat, and actually looking around, you look at the top 10 in 25-man and in 10-man, and CTR is definitely holding up the 10-man end of that deal with some really great progression going on, and there are some other great guilds on Airy Peak as well.
Yeah, there's Alone, the 25-man guild. I think they pushed. I think they're into top 30 for 25-mans right now.
Yeah, I mean,
that.
I think they're top 100 overall.
Yeah, they're doing really well, and
That's-
congrats to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they're 32 in the U.S. for 25-man right now.
Wow, that's
Wait,
crazy.
who is this? Who?
Alone?
Alone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Great for them. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, terrific team. So Colt, what have you been up to?
Well,
Have you
old
been
Coltrane-
old heroic Garage for you?
Yeah, you know, the huge. Me and G-Rosh, you know,
Right.
keeping it real up in the field, right?
G-Rosh.
Yeah, you know, he's got that extra phase.
Right.
Yeah, whatever. No big deal.
Right.
I actually got to ask Affinity because I hear that's like a 20-minute fight or something like that. Is that true?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
It's
Not
all right.
like
that
19
long.
and a half.
I mean, it's got an 18-minute enrage timer. I won't tell you what our kill time was, but it was not 18 minutes.
Okay.
Whew. It was 30 seconds. It was
At least it wasn't as long as Shaw was. That was like heroic
Oh,
had
yeah.
a phase 2 enrage timer, and that was crap.
Right.
right.
Hated that.
Right.
That's
2-hour adventure, like got an intermission in between where you can read
was-
a book. And
It was so long that they gave you the extra haste buff the first time you got to phase 2, just so you could get to phase 2 faster.
yeah, that was no
insane.
thanks.
That's insane.
No,
Well,
thanks.
I had a similar experience to fighting Heroic Garage in LFR, actually. Very similar. Lots of wipes, and, you know.
You went up.
angry
You went up
people.
against Nazgrim before the before the nerf. And
that's right. But I'll tell you what, we called it. I said last week, don't worry, people. They're going to nerf Nazgrim. Nothing to worry about. And they did. They nerfed Nazgrim. So that's good news for the LFR community, I think, because, one person could wipe the raid, and that's no good.
Yep.
But I spent a little time on the Monk, and believe it or not, picked up the old Resto Shaman again, getting back into the healing game. I kind of miss it.
Wow.
Yeah,
Look at
so
you.
it's a lot of fun to be staring at those green bars again and kind of healing. I having a good time.
Yeah, you haven't done that since Wrath, right?
Yeah, Wrath. Yeah, I was a full-time druid healer, healed progression, all that stuff all throughout Wrath, and it's kind of nice to kind of be back, and into the healing thing. And Resto Shamans are looking great in 5.4. They got some really nice buffs, and they're really doing well. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Healing is a lot of fun right now in 5.4. I think for most everybody. I think everybody's finding at least something. Affinity, I know that you play a lot of different healing classes. Would you say that that's true? As far as just healing in general for 5.4 is
from
much
a healer,
better?
Just for playing a healer, yes. For healer balance,
right?
No.
So what's
no?
How's the balance working out for you? I mean, I know I have my own issues with that, but
let me find it. I made this post on MMO Champion in the Monk forum. I think it's the most words that I've ever typed in one sitting.
There's like five words.
Seven words.
It's like 7 words, yeah. Okay, so basically Ghostcrawler in a tweet goes, you can't use meters as a solid comparison of the healer potency. Is what I have to say about that.
Well, I mean, it's not as cut and dried as DPS, right? I mean, you can only get...
Sure. I mean, if I'm doing 50,000 more HPS than a Disc Priest, then you can go, well, a Disc Priest mitigates incoming damage, so the meter doesn't matter because they're just as effective.
Right.
But when they're beating me, then meters matter because they... Okay, so Garrosh.
Yeah.
Priest 1, 175 million healing done.
Jeez.
Priest 2, within 500k of that was 174.7 mil. Monk, I was the third of 4 healers, 110 million.
Wow.
Yeah, but you have to look at it like this, where a boss always has health. There's always damage to be doing. With health on players, there's not always healing to be doing, and that's where Disc Priests shine. If a Disc Priest is doing their job, you're not doing as much healing.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that they're less imbalanced than you are. It just means they're doing their job correctly. They're good priests.
Right.
To an extent, but I mean, when they can mitigate all of the incoming damage and then the damage that's left over, they can heal with their level 90 talent, then I kind of disagree with you.
Well,
But if you were to
don't
take
think
you
much.
out or the other healer out and leave just the 2 priests, 2 Disc Priests, they wouldn't be as effective because they can mitigate the incoming damage, but when it's left to heal up from 30%, they're not going to beat you on that.
Right.
That's where your 110 million or whatever it was, that's where yours shines. So, they're not overpowered. They're just good at the front end, and you're way better at the back end.
Wait.
Didn't
What?
like that.
Wait, what?
Oh boy.
What was that? What was that?
Yeah.
Did you just say that? What? No, but you're right, because one of the things that I always look at as a druid healer is I know that I'm gonna not be in the lead because we do have a Disc Priest, and so it's one of those things where I always look at overhealing, and my overhealing looks fantastic.
You're the champion.
It's awesome. 50% overheals.
Overhealing meters.
I mean, I would agree with you to an extent, except for the balance that they have right now is just... Garrosh in particular, like during intermissions, I would be comparable to a Disc Priest, but anytime there would be incoming damage, they would mitigate 85% of it, and then they would heal up the rest of that for the most part, and I would just be left with like a little sliver. So to an extent, I agree with you. On another side, on a little bit more of a complicated level, I don't necessarily agree. If I had my priest as geared as my monk, then we probably would have 3 priest healed that, is what it comes down to. Yeah.
Keep in mind, too, that Darius actually plays a priest, so the last thing he wants is nerfs or any type of balance going on. So
Healer channel, the entire tier is priests are underpowered, buff them more.
Right.
Buff priests.
Right.
More buffs.
Yes, yes. Please buff priests, because I'm not sick of that at all, at all.
Buff priest.
Hey, before we get into the news, I just want to cover a couple of things real quick. Number one, BlizzCon is coming up. I mean, we're like a month away from BlizzCon. Affinity, are you going to go to the con?
Oh, hell yeah. Definitely going this time. I wasn't able to go last time around, and that's when we did the whole Firelands like live raid thing, and
Oh, right.
that was cool. It would have been awesome to actually have been there. This time we're actually, I believe my flight leaves on the 2nd, and my return flight is the 10th.
Wow.
So Blood Legion is we're basically renting a house that can hold like 20 people. That's within walking distance of the convention center for a full like 10 days, and it's gonna be.
That makes sense.
It's gonna be awesome.
It's gonna be
I just-
disaster.
And then I'm just
I'm gonna be in the same room as Rig for like 10 days. It's gonna be a disaster.
Yikes! Right.
One of you's not leaving that room.
somebody go in the kitchen and make me some pancakes.
Two
What?
man enter, one man leave.
That's right.
It's gonna be fun. I look forward to it.
I just kind of picture all of Blood Legion holding hands at Disneyland. You know, just kind of traipsing
Singing
down.
It's a Small World.
Yeah, exactly. Going, doing all the rides, smiling, happy thoughts. You know, all that kind of stuff. It's just
That's
kind
insane. That's gonna be a great time. Holy
Yeah.
cow!
Yeah, it's gonna be. I look forward to it. It's gonna be fun.
Party at the BL.
of. Well, just to
gonna be
let you know, Affinity. We announced last week on the show that we are actually going to be having a CTR community meetup at the Hilton on Friday night. So
Oh, sweet.
swing on by if you can.
Yeah, let's see.
And we'll hang out and we'll chat. And we've got stuff we're doing there. The Converted Podcast is going to be there doing a show. We've got some prizes to give away, and so on
Free
and so forth.
stuff.
Yeah, free stuff.
Free stuff.
Like
Do I have to go to this?
um,
Am I required?
Yes, so we can all talk about buffing priests.
Yeah, that's,
Right.
And how Affinity's way better at the back end?
no,
That is just.
Right on.
it's true though. It's spot on. Anyway, if you're coming down to BlizzCon, come join us, please do. If you can't come down, they did announce a bunch of prizes for the virtual ticket. If you buy the virtual ticket, you get some in-game goodies. WoW players get the Crusader Murloc, which actually looks
It's actually the Surlock is what it's
the
called.
Surlock.
Surlock.
The Surlock. But that's bad. But I mean, it looks pretty cool, right?
Looks awesome.
D3 players will get a nice little banner. SC2 players get portrait and decal, and Hearthstone players get a special commemorative card for it. And so there's lots of prizes. So if you play any or all of those games, you will get something for that. That's cool.
I love the goodies.
And I did the virtual ticket last time around. So did Colt. And
I've always done that in the past as well.
it works well. It works really well.
I have some advice though.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
I got the virtual ticket like 3 years ago or 4 years ago. It's when they were giving out the Marine, the murky Marine guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I get the card and I'm all excited and I'm in such a hurry. I'm like, oh my gosh, I finally got the Murloc Marine. I'm so jazzed. I got to scratch this this code so I can enter it in. Well, I don't have a quarter, but I've got my car keys. So I'll just use my car keys.
Don't use the keys.
So I scratch and I scratch and I scratch until I cannot read the code.
Oh, God.
And I literally scratched off like the last 4 letters or numbers. And I could not get the Murloc Marine. But to this day, I just don't have it. And I tried 50,000 different combinations of those last 4 and couldn't get it. So
There's one unclaimed Murloc out there sitting in a database, and Blizzard's like, why won't he claim this? Delete this database.
Oh man.
This whole thing.
Man.
There's one Murloc.
Oh boy. So yeah, don't use the key, but there's lots of prizes for those that get the virtual ticket, and those things will be available for those that are going to the con as well, I believe. So you'll get something if you go to BlizzCon. You'll get something if you get the virtual ticket. Either way, it's going to be a fun show, I think. And there's going to be lots of interesting things that they will be talking about, like perhaps the Warcraft movie.
what?
They did do a little tweet about that this week, didn't they, Colt?
They did. They tweeted to Deets. said, we're pleased to announce that Legendary Pictures Warcraft will be released on December 18th, 2015.
It's right after my birthday. They knew.
Right.
Coming up.
There
It's
we
my
go.
birthday present.
There we go. Just a little more than a year away. Oof.
A
Coming
year?
up.
Try
Oh,
2
2
years.
years. Just a little bit more than 2 years away.
There you go.
Sorry. My mind is not on all cylinders quite yet.
Story of my life.
But they do and they do have a bunch of rumored actors. Colin Farrell
Yes.
being among them.
My problem with the rumored actors list is the fact that it's coming from IMDb, which most people don't know this, but IMDb is basically a wiki. Anyone that has an account can go in there and add things, and people are just adding things they've heard. None of these have been confirmed, and I don't think some of these will be.
None of them have been confirmed, and especially Colin Farrell has not been confirmed.
Yeah.
Go.
But Macaulay Culkin is confirmed.
Yeah. No, that was the one person they confirmed.
Yes.
Right.
He's playing Anduin.
He's playing Anduin, Rin. Exactly. It's insane. No, but they've got Colin Farrell rumored, Paula Patton, Paul Dano, Anson Mount. I really don't know a lot of these people.
Yeah.
Paula Patton was in the Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol.
Yeah.
She was the lady.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And and if you go to IMDb and you look up the movie, you'll see Anson Mount, who really looks like Varian Rin. That's
Well,
all
he does.
That's all I'm gonna say. He just needs a little scar on his head, and he's fine.
The other guy, Anton Yelkin, he's the guy from Star Trek.
Yeah.
Who's like, Captain, what about there?
Yeah.
I forgot what his character was playing.
He was playing the Russian. Yeah,
he plays
Chekhov.
Chekhov. Yeah, that guy is rumored to be in it.
Right. But he's
Maybe
so
he
awesome
plays like
with
a
voices.
gnome or something.
He's so awesome with voices. He could play anything. Really.
Yeah, that's true.
Really. I don't know.
I think some of these were just wishful thinking on people's parts.
Maybe. I don't know. We'll find out as we go through over the next 2 years. Not the next.
Yes,
not the
not
next one.
Comes out in 3 months.
Yeah, it comes out in 3 months. Everybody.
Comes out right after BlizzCon.
Oh boy, I'm just not with it today. So maybe we should get into the raiding news.
Calling all raiders from around World of Warcraft land. This is raiding news.
All right, it's time to check out what's happening this week in raiding news. And first up is all about Affinity. Really.
Yeah.
We should get him on the show.
You're right. I know. I
We're
was
gonna
thinking
talk
that.
about him.
I was
We
thinking
should
that
get him on
earlier.
the show.
I was thinking that earlier. But no, Garrosh is down in both 25 and 10-man heroics this week. And Method got world first. Blood Legion, you guys got U.S. first. Paragons with the 10-man heroic first kill, at least for the western side of things. And we'll get into that in a little bit.
And Exorcist just killed it 8 minutes ago too. So there you go.
Nice. Well, congratulations to those guys as well, and to you, and to Method, everybody that's beating up Garrosh. So
He deserves it, so it's good.
right.
Yeah, screw him.
Right. Yeah, he was no good. No good. Now I know that Method had about 275 pulls. How many pulls did you guys do on Garrosh? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I was only in for about 140 of them, maybe. So I wasn't in for about half of them. I think we did it in a little less than Method did. It was right about the same number though. It was pretty close.
Gotcha. What did you think of the fight? Just overall.
It's disappointing that Garrosh took less attempts than Siegecrafter, Black Fuse, and Paragons did. If you combine all three bosses' total pull count, you're right at about 700 pulls, which is great. But when you compare it to something like Heroic Rag, which was, mid 500, I think Paragon was like 550, I want to say. It was somewhere around there. Lei Shen was kind of a similar number. And then you get to the, the villain of the expansion, and it was only right about 280-ish attempts on the 25-man side of things. So it was kind of disappointing. I liked the idea behind the fight, but there was a couple of quirks that kind of annoyed me, specifically the fact that we underheal the fight, and I'm really not a huge fan of dropping healers. I like an end boss where we bring in more healers, because at least for us, you kind of look at a boss and you kind of go, oh, we're not meeting the DPS check, let's drop a healer. And then you go, oh, we're not making the DPS check, let's drop 2 more. And it's like,
How many were in on the kill? It was like 4, right?
Yeah, we used 4. I know one of the Asian guilds 3 healed it. It's definitely 3 healable on the Western side of things. There just wasn't an immediate benefit for doing so, so we didn't.
Right.
But it's kind of a little underwhelming when you're under healing content, and it's still just really not that challenging from a healer standpoint. Like Heroic Ragnaros was when you would 3 heal that. That was pretty crazy because there was some spread out requirements and things of that nature.
Right.
The fight mechanics, I mean, I think it was a good designed encounter, minus the fact that you underhealed it. You didn't see all of the boss mechanics. We won't talk about that until after a video's out.
Right. Probably for the best.
Enrage, in the grand scheme of things, just was non-existent for that, which was kind of a disappointment. But, you know, what are you going to do?
Well, apparently, sit back and relax because it's over.
Yeah.
It's over. It's over for the expansion. So
we're done until they give us a Halion. You know, maybe they'll do that.
Now, there was a big, the big data miners, right? They came in and you see Stormwind Harbor, and it's covered in Shaw. I mean, it's all shot up, and the internet, everybody went crazy. It's like, what? That Blizzard clearly hates Stormwind. And then later it was revealed, oh, this is an extra phase in the heroic Garrosh encounter. How was the Stormwind Harbor section of that fight? Was it crazy? Was it cool?
The design intent behind it was pretty interesting. Unfortunately, I want to say we only ever got to the Stormwind phase about 10 times or so before the boss died. So it wasn't like oh my god, this is a super challenging phase. It was more getting there repetitively enough to be able to figure out what you wanted to do with the mechanics.
It didn't look like there's a lot of emphasis on the Stormwind part. It just looks like a Shaw-torn area.
It was really just kind of like they could have put it anywhere, but they probably put it in Stormwind because that was less art they had to do. I mean, they already used Org, might as well use Stormwind too.
Right.
Just reusing art. That's the only thing that they're doing.
It was nice to see Stormwind in there and all the leaders impaled and things of that nature. But
sure.
What?
I mean, it wasn't anything.
Were they impaled?
Super
like really?
Well, I mean, it's a dream phase of.
Yeah,
that old god's name that I'm not going to try and pronounce.
This is what happens if you don't kill Garrosh, kind of thing.
Wow, that's crazy.
You've got all the leaders are impaled on spikes on the wall.
Whoa, that's pretty harsh.
A little hardcore.
Rough.
Yeah, whatever.
Garrosh is kind of a jerk. I don't know if you've met the guy before.
There's rumors.
Not cool. He makes Dave look like a nice guy.
I don't know. I think he's just misunderstood.
Dave is a nice guy. He's just a horrible, horrible raider. We really like Dave. As a person.
Absolutely.
By the way, I played a guy in Hearthstone the other day, and his name was Dave Raider, and I was like, this guy's got to listen to this show or something, because how can Dave Raider? It's like, and then he kicked my butt. So he's really good at Hearthstone. Not a great WoW player, but really good at Hearthstone.
I'm actually curious. Where do you rate Garrosh as far as end tier boss? Compared to Shaw, Lei Shen, and now Garrosh. Where do you compare Garrosh?
I mean, my biggest and with Garrosh is the fact that not that he's an end tier boss, but that he's an end of expansion boss. And they dropped the ball with Deathwing 2. But that was a little different because it was technically like 2 fights instead of 1, so it kind of still had that there. I would put it ahead of Shaw, but not by much. Lei Shen was definitely the boss of the expansion, and I mean they did this in Cataclysm too, where it was like the middle tier end boss was this awesome boss encounter, and then the very final one of the expansion, it's not a Lich King, and that's kind of what I would like to see again is kind of a boss that turns out to be kind of as crazy hard as Lich King. Or at least harder than the second tier end boss would definitely be preferable.
Gotcha.
Good fight, not as hard as I would have liked it to have been though.
Sure.
I remember seeing Rignaros. He tweeted, "Blizzard, whatever you do not nerf heroic 25 Lei Shen. This fight is like perfect.
Right.
Whatever you do."
See, the nice thing about Lei Shen is not only was it a massive gear check, it was also a mechanically difficult boss encounter. There's just a lot of different abilities going on, and there's you have control over how you do the fight. You can do different conduits. You can level up different conduits. You can kind of mix it up a little bit if you wanted to. Obviously, one method would be easier than the other, but no matter how much gear you had, there was still something that could cause you to wipe on this boss. Garrosh kind of has that, but Garrosh is kind of one of those, like, the more gear you have, the fight's just going to become easier and easier and easier and easier, and you're not really going to have that kind of level of complexity that Lei Shen did. And that was one of the things that we really, really liked about Lei Shen, and that's what prompted that tweet was they did that with Rag. Rag was this awesome, badass boss encounter, and then they nerfed him 15% a couple weeks in.
Right.
Which was just a tremendous nerf to the boss encounter and kind of made it feel less epic. But Lei Shen still kind of, even through farm, it was easier, but it still kind of had that this boss encounter was just awesome. So, I mean, I agreed with the tweet that he had sent out on that. That was definitely spot on, and I'm glad that they didn't ever technically nerf it.
Right.
Right.
Well, let's maybe bring it back to the beginning part of Siege of Orgrimmar. Now, you guys were able to get in there right away, and you blasted through. How many world firsts did you get in the first week?
I mean, those were defaulted to us,
Sure.
just because of how we did it a day earlier. Blah blah blah.
Yes, there was
fanboyism. Yada yada yada. It was all the way through spoils, so that was the first. Was that the first 10 bosses?
No, 10. Yeah, 10.
Yeah, the first 10 bosses.
Wow.
Those all died the first. Was that the? I think that was all the first night.
The first day.
Was that like seriously undertuned or what?
They did a better. I mean, the one thing that I praise Blizzard on for this tier is that they did a better job of making it more of a linear progression path instead of just kind of like. You get up to council and then you just kind of go, what the hell? And then your average standard guild ends up skipping that boss. And if you look at progression for your typical guild in Throne of Thunder, it was kind of like you would do the first boss and then you would do Iron Quan and then you would do this boss and then you wouldn't do it in order.
Right.
So they've done better this tier with making it an in order linear progression path.
That's good.
But in the process of them making sure that it progressively got a little bit harder, we one-shot or two-shot most of the bosses up until Malkarok.
Wow, that's crazy.
It's just a matter of tuning. But, I mean, they tested bosses in Throne of Thunder, for example, at right about full normal mode gear. I want to say Quan and Twins was right about 535, which was like full heroic mode gear. And this time around, the early bosses were all tuned right at about the 555. Like the first half was tuned at like 560 at the most. And we had that item level basically going into it because of the item level upgrades. So they ended up under-tuning the bosses a little too far, which resulted in especially Nourishen being able to brute force it and just ignore boss mechanics.
Yeah, that was that was kind of one of those things that popped up right away, and people they're like, "Oh, I suppose we got to fix this now."
Right, and if they would have tuned the bosses a little bit more appropriately, then the linear progression path would have been a lot better because each boss kind of introduced a new level of difficulty. It was just tuned so low that didn't really matter to us up until Malkarok.
Right.
Sure.
But it was definitely nice to be able to go through the first couple of bosses before you really hit a boss where you just kind of went, okay, now the difficulty's increasing, rather than going, okay, we're on the third boss, council super hard, and then you get to Tortos and you're just kind of like, trash pack, free loot. Like they didn't do that, which it was nice that they did it that way for sure.
Cool. Now, do you have a personal favorite encounter? Was Garrosh the favorite encounter of the raid, or was there another one that was better in your opinion?
Black Fuse. I really liked Siegecrafter Black Fuse. We kind of hit the red button Mimiron style on our specific strategy for that boss compared to the other strategies, but that was definitely one of my more favorite bosses. That was kind of, there's very few bosses that you go into after PTR where you just kind of go, we don't know what we're gonna do. Like most of the bosses you have a general idea, and this one we were kind of like, we didn't really know what the weapon order was yet. We weren't sure if that was going to change from what we had seen so far on PTR. So it was one of those bosses that it's nice when you kind of get to the boss after PTR and you're just kind of like, what do we do? Let's start throwing ideas around. So
Right.
that was definitely my most favorite of this particular tier.
Cool.
I'm actually curious, when you go into these fights, I mean, because of PTR testing, is it just like a quick, all right, real quick, we already know what we're doing here, it's a quick review, and then go? Is that pretty much how it is? Like, you do all your research, obviously, during all PTR testing?
Most of the bosses, we either know how to kill it, have killed it on PTR, or have a general idea of what we need to do. We just need to actually execute it. And that's pretty evident in the first couple of bosses where we would 1 or 2 shot them.
Sure.
So typically, the earlier bosses, we know what's going on. The end boss on Heroic, we don't really know what's going on, but we've got the data mined information. So we have a general idea of what may or may not happen. We just have to have timers for it to really figure out where things line up.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I mean, most of the bosses, we basically knew how we wanted to go about doing those particular boss encounters just from PTR testing.
It's awesome.
And you guys make, you speak, we just need to go in and execute it. You guys make this look like seriously easy. Like, like every single fight, even if there's dead guys kind of strewn around the room, you guys make it look easy when we see these videos and stuff like that. How do you? Is it just 17, 20 hours a day of fighting these bosses plus PTR plus all this other stuff? Is that the key?
Yeah, I mean, for the end bosses, the amount of time you raid definitely is a factor. There's also another factor of gear, though, because while we do raid more, it's not like you can't compare it to a guild that raids the same amount of hours over a month-long period because they've got additional resets that we don't have. So you typically, for the harder bosses that are DPS checks, you have to really know your class inside and out,
Right.
upside down, backwards, to really be able to kind of make things work. The earlier bosses, like I said, they were tuned low enough and our DPS are solid enough that it really wasn't that big of a deal for some of the earlier bosses, which kind of made it look even easier than it was. I mean, I think last week, like, your decently progressed or average progressed heroic mode guild was kind of right around Nazgrim, and I was surprised that people are stuck on Nazgrim because we one-shot that boss.
Sure.
And a lot of that really does come down to preparation and progression time, and we record our PTR stuff, and we'll kind of dissect it and have a really solid written out strategy of what exactly we need to do if we need a guide for something like that.
Gotcha.
Kind of a random question, actually. Go ahead, Zug. Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, as far as gearing goes, you're just talking about gear and all that kind of stuff. I was watching some stream or whatever, and one of the method guys said, like, oh, yeah, well, we barely gear our tanks, during progression. Like, our tanks had the lowest amount of gear. Is there, like, in heroic hardcore level rating, is there, like, more of a, and I don't know if you're allowed to answer this, I have no idea. Do you gear DPS? Do you gear healers first? Is there a particular order, or, like, you know what I mean? Do you focus on this particular type of thing first?
Healers don't have any priority on anything, simply because when you look at a boss, you kind of go, that's the first thing you want to drop. Like, you're usually not wiping to a healer problem, you're wiping to a boss enrage. Or something like that. So typically, I would say our tanks are equally geared to our DPS. A lot of that just comes because, I mean, who else is going to wear the gear?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And the way that we set up our normal modes is like everyone kind of has their own group that they're in, so that they're going to get prioritized the normal mode stuff, and like tanks will get normal mode tier, and then they just won't get heroic tier at all. Like DPS will get that. So DPS definitely have a priority on the vast majority of things when it comes to progression gearing over your tanks and your healers.
Because as we know, DPS kills bosses, right?
DPS kills bosses.
That's always the phrase that gets bandied about. Unless
Healers
of
are more skilled, so they don't need as much gear.
Healers kill bosses. DPS just decide how quickly.
There you go.
I see. Very nice.
There you go.
Well, actually, I have kind of a follow-up, too. Now that this entire expansion is over, actually, I have a twofold question. One, you've seen this expansion from beginning to end. As far as classes go, class stacking, was that as prevalent in
Warlock.
this expansion? Right, Warlock, compared to
Next
others.
question.
Right, exactly.
I mean, Class stacking has definitely become a huge portion of what we do. A lot of that is because the progression rating scene has kind of changed to a degree where you've got geared alts. If you look, way back in the day, and even Cataclysm and Burning Crusade and things like that, you didn't maintain 6 alts to do normal mode 6 times the first week. You didn't do that. And now we do, and we can kind of look at it and we kind of go, well, this class isn't that great, so we're still going to give you gear on this because it's your main, and we want to use your main for everything. But if we can gear up a Warlock alt as well, and then get to a boss that DPS is crazy or add damage is crazy, or you just want classes that don't take any damage, then you bring in a Warlock. So I would say that contributes a lot to class stacking. I would definitely say outside of Spine of Deathwing, this is definitely the most that you've really seen guilds consistently class stack, in at least in recent history from really what I can remember.
And I would assume that's a negative, right, to the game, not a positive?
Not really, because we are the top 1% or whatever percent it is.
Right.
Blizzard has really oriented themselves on this bring the player, not the class thing. And for your average guild, you can do that because your DPS isn't going to be, it's going to be an issue, but not as big of an issue because you've got more gear, or your healer comp isn't going to matter as much because you can heal it with the expected amount of healers because DPS isn't an issue.
Right.
For your top end guilds, I mean, even if it's only a 0.5% increase, you're going to want to do whatever you possibly can to try and get yourself that little bit more leverage over the other guild that's also working on the boss at the time.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Especially, it's interesting too because you're also a challenging heroic garage, and you actually are under geared. You have less gear than what you're supposed to have. So
yeah, what was your average item level? It was around 565 or something like that. When you
on Progress tracks it, let's see what they have to say about that.
568.
568 is what it says, but I mean, my item level went up like 4 item levels when I equipped an offhand that I got after killing Garrosh. So it was
this is updated yesterday, and you guys killed
it was
2 days ago.
The item level is going to be a little bit lower than that, but it's a good benchmark to put it right about there. So I mean, they kind of expect that your average guild by the time they get to it are probably going to be full normal mode gear with 3/4 heroic mode pieces is kind of what they would expect your typical guild to be at, and we're nowhere near that.
Right.
So
now
that's what's such a testament to you guys, just your level. Like when I was doing like normal heroics, I was like, my gosh, these guys were in half the gear that we're in, and you guys are taking them down. It's just incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And actually, I want to talk about the Paragon thing real quick because we were talking about, players versus, their spec or their class or whatever. And Paragon did the 10-man heroic version of Garrosh, and after like 630 some odd pulls, they finally got him down, and they did it only using one healer, a holy priest.
Right.
And so the question is, when you can do a one heal encounter, is that the player, or is that the holy priest just really shining in this, or is it some sort of combination?
That's Blizzard dropping the ball on the boss encounter. I mean, I'm surprised they used a holy priest simply because we have not used a holy priest for anything.
Right.
I mean, I think the Asian 10-man obviously they had inflated item levels because Asia's weird and all that stuff.
Right.
And they used a Resto Shaman for that, which made sense to me. I was surprised that they used a Holy Priest for it. So I would say that's probably a little bit to do with the player. Well, a lot to do with the player, and then a little bit to do with how the class mechanics specifically work on that fight with that class. So maybe something just lined up better that way, or they just preferred that was the healer that they had. It really could have just been that was the preferred healer, and it didn't really matter what they were on.
Right. Darius, now the news on Twitter is that everybody needs a holy priest.
Yeah, everybody get a holy priest. No,
that's right.
It was priest. Just get a holy priest.
They brought a holy priest because he is one of, if not the best priest in the world. He is really good, but he's also playing his holy priest in a very specific way. He's gemmed and enchanted and specced in very weird ways. He's got 3 times the spirit that he should probably have. He's running almost double the amount of haste that most people have as a holy priest. He's doing some weird things, and that's because he's one healing a fight.
He was running the renew haste breakpoint, wasn't he? It was like 13 something.
He's up to 32% haste and 21,000 spirit,
Jeez.
which is nuts.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
But it's so he can one heal this fight, and it's they said in a post on IRC that they probably could have two healed it, but in order to beat the enrage and kill all the ads and everything, they found that one healing it worked, and
wow.
They just stuck with that. That was what they had been doing for a while, so why change it?
Right.
And then I mean there was some off healing going on. They brought some classes that were throwing out some heals, but overall, one holy priest combined with a whole lot of raid cooldowns was able to do it.
I think an interesting thing to note as well, though, is bring the class, not the player, is a little less specific to healers as it is to DPS. I mean, if you look at our healer comp versus Method's healer comp for this particular fight, we used 2 priests, a shaman and a monk, and Method used like a pally, resto, druid, disc priest, shaman, I think is what it was. So I mean, it's really bring your best healer more so than it is bring the best class to an extent in those specific situations. So, I mean, if he was their best healer, then yeah, you would bring your best healer.
But you always need some specific things, right? I mean, you need some sort of absorb, some sort of really good, big cooldowns, some strong single target heals, some good raid heals as well. So I mean, you kind of have to adjust your composition as you kind of lock down players, right?
But they've kind of made all the classes be able to do everything now, though, in a way,
Yeah, things are a little bit less specific in that regard.
Sure.
Everyone can kind of fill everyone else's role. Like back in Wrath, like Holy Paladin, that was your tank healer. And while we used our Holy Pally to tank heal, he was not in for our Garrosh kill. Like he was in for the first half of the pulls, and then they brought me in. I'm a monk. I wasn't healing the tanks.
Right.
Like, that wasn't happening.
Right.
So it's one of those things that you can make those roles up elsewhere.
Sure.
If you do it properly.
But there is still some consideration, not necessarily as much as there has been in the past, but there has to be at least some consideration for that stuff.
To an extent.
Yeah, with like the 2-piece and things like that, holy priests are pretty well-rounded priests right now. But when you're talking one healing a fight like this, a lot of the earnest is just on everyone else to play their class at a top level and know their class inside and out and push their cooldowns at the right time.
And know the encounter so well that you're not taking as much damage as you possibly can. That's for sure.
That's where a lot of it comes in allowing you to one heal a fight like this.
That's where it comes in when you're doing 600 pulls on a boss. Oh my God.
I mean, Garrosh is also very timer specific too. You know where all of the damage is coming from, and you know exactly when it's going to happen. So it's definitely going to be easier to one heal a fight like that, simply because you're capable of knowing when things have to be where. So like he said, you've got to have your cooldowns lined up when you need them, and it's easier to do that when everything's quite as specific as Garrosh was in that regard.
I don't know if it was intentional or not, but a lot of the mechanics in the fight seem to line up really well with cooldowns.
Right, yeah.
Both healer and DPS, and I don't know if Blizzard did that on purpose or not.
I think so. I mean, I've noticed that a lot of mechanics line up to healer cooldowns. I've noticed that throughout Siege of Orgrimmar, actually. Throughout doing it in normals and flex and whatever, that it seems like, if you have like a 3-minute timer between big, huge abilities, that means that, oh, hey, healers, look out. You have this thing that's coming in 3 minutes, so might as well use your big cooldown right now because it's coming back around. So, I don't know. Did you find the same thing, Affinity?
Yeah, I mean, specifically Garrosh, like I can say this because it does it on normal too. Your intermissions are right about 3 minutes apart.
Yeah.
Which lines up really well with your Dehim and your Tranks and your Revivals and any 3-minute cooldown, really. So definitely lined up a little bit better there than I think I've seen in the past, for sure.
By the way, spoilers, Method has just released the video.
Dun, dun, dun.
Right.
I hope
So-
our video's
the
ready.
Stars released theirs yesterday or the day before, I think.
Yeah.
Their kill video.
Yep. They had to be
Asians.
first. And speaking of which, we haven't really talked about the Asian race at all because this has been race to world first. Sorry, I don't want to be misunderstood there. It's the race to world first for Asia. All right, because we've been talking about the Western race. Really, I mean this has been the race that we have known for a long time since the 10 and 25 have shared a lockout and all the different changes that they did for Cataclysm. And now they've changed some of that stuff back for Asia with different lockouts, different loot for 25-man, and different boss health. And, I think all the mechanics are the same, right?
Yeah, so the mechanics are the same. In Asia, they've got lockouts for 10 and 25-man. The gear is a little bit higher. Envision it this way. When you get a piece of gear that drops in Siege of Orgrimmar, it has 2 of 2 upgrade slots. Well, their gear comes 2 upgrades already, and they can upgrade it twice more. But to offset that, the boss has 8% more health and does 8% more damage. So to say that they had a higher eye level doesn't quite negate them from the race. When you're looking at Blood Legion, you guys did this at 565, they did it at 553. That's a 1.4% increase in eye level. That's not 8%.
They didn't have, like, are you sure that's what their item level was? That doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah, it was 573.
Yeah,
it was their eye level when they killed it.
Yep.
The thing really is 8% increase on HP and damage isn't, like, 8 item levels is more damage and more healing than that 8%. So I'm not going to try and argue the logistics if it's harder or if it's easier, just the fact that it's different. And that's the thing, is it's like 10 and 25, and this has been an ongoing debate for a very long time. It's different. It doesn't matter if one's easier or one's harder. It's just a totally different thing. Sure. It's like trying to compare American football to rugby. Same general concept, but in their own respects, they are 2 separate things. So you have to respect them as such rather than trying to merge everything together, because at the end of the day, 1 + 1 does not equal fish.
When it comes down to it, though, Stars killed it first. No matter where they did it, how they did it, they killed it first. They killed it first in the world. And whether you want to compare that to Method or Paragon or 10-man, 25-man, whatever, they got it first, and good for them.
And I saw a lot of different sites like Mana Flask and Guildox and WoW Progress and stuff like that. Kind of, these guys are talking about it, and they're like, well, what do we do here? Because we have to compare apples to apples at some point. And these guys are definitely not. I mean, it's like what you said, Affinity. I would probably liken it more like American football to Canadian football, or to arena football. Whatever it is, it's definitely different. It's kind of the same game with a lot of little differences that make it a different game. And so they said, well, we just have to watch both sides, I guess, and not very effectively either, because when I go to WoW Progress, it doesn't pop up the Eastern race. It just pops up the Western one. And so then I see, all you guys, Blood Legion, Method, Paragon, those guys. And you don't see Stars. You don't see Kin. You don't see any of those other guys up there.
I feel like what they did with the 10 versus 25, making them 2 different columns on WoW Progress, for example, was the right thing to do in that respect. I think they should have a 3rd column that shows Asia, which is going to be harder to pull off because for whatever reason, Chinese servers are not pulled for WoW Progress. They don't pull them for some reason.
Really? Yeah, they don't update them, and the guilds over there don't bother to update it manually, so none of that stuff gets stuck in there.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, the races have to be different. While it is 8%, they also have a separate 10-man lockout, so they can technically double their gear if they so care to. Not saying that they did, but they have the ability to do so. So it's just there's these little differences that make it not the same, that it does need its own column. Why there isn't an appropriate column there while also tracking the Chinese realms or what have you still kind of blows my mind, but something needs to change there without trying to make it the same thing. And it's not Asia's fault. It's Blizzard's fault over there because they were the ones that decided to do it that way. It was forced upon the player base.
Well, and the reason
it's their fault.
And Blizzard has good reason for doing it though, because everything is done differently over there. They play differently.
I mean, it makes sense why they did it, but you just at the end of the day, it's a different game over there, so you have to respect it as a separate game.
Yeah,
completely agree.
Yep, I would totally agree with that. And now let's maybe swing out of the most top of the top raid teams, top 1% to the rest of the folks, and let's talk about LFR a little bit because we had some big changes this week.
Wait! Did you just say that LFR raiders are not the top 1%?
They are not the top 1%. You are correct.
Hate mail to Zug.
That's right. That's right. Bat guano in my game mail.
Absolutely.
That's right. And remember, as we discussed last week, please do not bring bat guano to BlizzCon. No, none of that.
You're just teeing it up, Zug. I don't know what you're doing.
Do not do that. Anyway, so Tuesday, we saw some changes to General Nazgrim. Darius, what's going on with this? There are a lot of changes here.
Yeah, so where we talked about last week where you can have one player kind of trolling the group and whatnot, and Nazgrim being too hard in LFR. And I think Blizzard's response was correct in saying, it's just the first week. Relax, guys. Don't worry. People will figure it out. And they did introduce some nerfs, but I don't think the nerfs solve the problem. Right now we've got Nazgrim's health has been reduced by 10%. And that's going to help a little bit on Enrage or things like that. Mm-hmm. His Ravager now hits for 200,000 damage. I'm not sure what that's down from. And I don't know because in normals, if you get hit by the Ravager, he gets Rage. And it doesn't say here whether they took that part out or not, which I've got to imagine was probably the biggest problem in General Nazgrim. Because you get one of those out, it starts hitting everybody in the group, and then he's just got 100 Rage always. Right. So if they took that out, then yeah, the fight is significantly easier. But if they didn't, then not much changes. I mean, he now gets one less Rage in defensive stance, down from 2. I mean, that's not that big of a change. Someone wailing on the boss is still going to give him 1 Rage every second. You got 2 people doing it, and he's got 2 Rage every second. He gets 2 Rage for each target by his Shockwave, down from 3. A little change. Again, not a huge one. 2 Rage from his banner, down from 3. There's nothing you can do about that. That's just when it spawns.
Right.
And then the War Shaman's Earth Shield now heals for 2%, down from 5. That's a big one. So if someone's not dispelling the boss or an ad, they're not going to heal up as much. And the Chain Heal now heals for 4% of maximum health, down from 10. And
that's another pretty big one.
That's a huge change. If you don't have someone doing interrupts, so those ads don't die quick enough, the boss doesn't go back up to full health immediately.
So do you think that this will help? I mean, do you think that this is the right direction? Were these changes needed, especially on Nazgrim?
I think the changes to like the Earth Shield and the Chain Heal are good because those are abilities that people just might not know how to deal with. Even if they've gone in there 2 or 3 times, a healer's probably not going to know to dispel the boss or to dispel, an ad or something like that. So that's a good change. But to just change defensive stance from 2 Rage to 1, that doesn't change the fact that one person can go in there and make sure everybody has a bad time. That can still happen. If someone is just tunneling into the boss in defensive stance, after 30 seconds, he's got 30 extra Rage on top of all the other abilities he's doing.
Right.
That's a big deal. That's still awful for LFR. Now, I don't want them to remove it though because I don't want them to make LFR too easy. I think people should have a challenge in there, and but I agree with Colt last week. One person shouldn't have the ability to ruin everyone's day in there.
So Coltrane, speaking of which,
yes.
Do you think that this is going to calm people down a little bit?
Yes, but I think the big thing is like 3 words for LFR, and that is hang in there. It's going to get better, essentially. I mean, you just have to give it time. People are going to start to learn these mechanics. Yeah. I've been so busy with work and everything, I was able to finally jump into LFR, and people were actually explaining the fights. And it really wasn't, especially the first whole wing, it was a one-shot on every single boss. It was not a wipe fest. Which was great. So I know that wasn't the case when it first got released. So there's already progression being made with the general public in LFR, and the same will happen here. I find it interesting that you're right. They nerfed it, but they didn't like nerf it. You know what I mean? You can still die from these mechanics, and one person can still cause a whole heck of a lot of trouble. So I think as people get to learn these mechanics, it will get better. But I think Nazgrim might not be done with the nerfs. I think there might be some more stuff in the future.
Something different should have been added there, similar to what we saw with Garelon, where someone could stand underneath it and just make him bounce constantly.
Do that smash or whatever.
So my thing with that is, why haven't they made it more like Warlords in Oz was in LFR? It's a long time ago, I know, but that boss... He would spawn a ball. You would, on normal and heroic, you would bounce the ball back and forth by having someone stand on it, right? It would activate. You would bounce it back and forth. You get more stacks. He would do more damage. On LFR, the ball just kind of, it was there. You saw that the mechanic existed, but you didn't have to micromanage it, and you couldn't screw it up. So maybe LFR shouldn't necessarily be a free gimme, but especially with them having introduced flex mode, maybe they should go back to rethinking of LFR needs to be there to introduce you to boss mechanics, but one person should not be able to grief you.
I agree.
That's not fun. So maybe they should make it more like that fight where it was more of a, this is what the boss mechanic looks like. It's punishing on a higher difficulty. We're just letting you know that this is here. Maybe they should go that approach.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it should have been something like, if you attack the boss in defensive stance, you get a debuff that you don't do any damage for 5 seconds. So you can't, you that was bad.
Was it your cat? Did I just hear your cat?
We have agreement.
Well, we have in game we have a weak aura for the priest that that my team has created, that when our Shadow Fiend is off cooldown, it pops up with a thing and it meows in game, and it's the exact same sound that his cat just made. I'm sitting here thinking, oh god, my Shadow Fiend's off cooldown.
I think that would be a good way to do that, though, where you would get a debuff where you wouldn't do damage, or you do reduce damage. So it would at least say, hey, you don't want to do this, but it doesn't directly punish the rest of your raid in the process. I think that's
bad. Don't do this anymore. And then, even if someone isn't paying attention to their debuffs, they look and say, wow, my damage is terrible. Why am I doing 20k DPS right now? And they realize, then they take a look and they realize it. And it also prevents the griefing, the trolling,
there's also people that just walk in there and mash their buttons and don't care.
Right.
You've got to be able to accommodate the people that just go in there and 1.
So arcane mages.
Don't you dare.
Yeah.
I was waiting for that. How dare you, sir?
Well, but that is always kind of the thing, right? I mean, you can't control what the agenda of the 24 other people that you're in LFR with is. So why should you expect anything except for, the 1-1-1 method?
Well, especially with their stance before on how LFR functions, it surprises me that they've left such an early LFR boss with abilities to an extent that you could grief someone like that, or just constantly wipe until somebody, it finally clicks in their head that, oh, I shouldn't do this, and then you have to wait on the 12 other people to learn the mechanic too. I mean, their stance in the past has kind of been, oh, you want to challenge, go do normal mode. Well, now it's like, you want to challenge, but you don't want to have to make a serious raid. Well, you don't have to do normal, you can do flex mode.
Right.
So they should definitely take it back to the LFR is LFR. It's there. It's not intended to be super complicated. It's supposed to introduce you to raiding. And then if you want something a little bit more serious, then you have flex. If you want something a little bit more serious, you have normal. And then you have heroic. They've got so many different difficulties that they really need to define each setting as kind of a heroics are for hardcore people, normals are for your average players, flex is for people that just want to raid, and then your LFR is LFR.
Yeah, for people sometimes who maybe don't have the time and all that stuff. But flex, I think, kind of opens up that idea that if you don't have time for a set raid team, you still can do flex. I love this idea, though, that in LFR, that you would stun yourself. It affects the player and not the raid. I love that idea. Because if you're doing DPS and then you're stunned, you can't play the game, and that's no fun for you. So, because you're right, when in LFR, it's anonymous. Some people have this agenda of wanting to wipe the raid. So if there's something they do that's bad, it affects them, not the raid. I think that's brilliant.
Hear
That's what
hear
they're
that,
doing.
Blizzard? I know they're listening right now.
Blizzard.
Ian
No,
Hazacostas,
Say.
make
Hear
it
that,
happen.
Dairies? Colt just said I was brilliant.
I didn't say you.
No, you said
Mr.
my
Hate
idea was
on
brilliant, so
arcane
I am
mage.
brilliant.
I think that was Affinity. Affinity. Because he's in his robe.
Yes.
Real men drink manatee.
There we go.
That's right.
You're gonna drink manatees?
No.
Manatee.
Mana tea. Oh boy. All right.
This show is confusing me.
I do think that Blizzard. Maybe I should ask the question. Do you guys think that Blizzard did the right thing with LFR as far as gearing goes? Because right now, what we had for Throne of Thunder for your Valor gear, which is the majority of LFR players were getting the majority of their stuff through Valor gear. And I think they said something like 70% of their gear was Valor gear or available. So that's item level 522. Item level for LFR in Siege of Orgrimmar is 528. It's only 6 points. It's not that big of a deal. And if you're in 522 gear, or if you're kind of close, you should probably go into Flex and go get the higher loot level, or at least that's the hope, right? That's the carrot that Blizzard has out there for them.
I think they do a really good job steering people from LFR to Flex with lower eye levels. But as we've been talking about, they do need to do something about mechanics, about introducing you to mechanics instead of making mechanics that, as we've been talking about with Nazgrim, that can wipe an entire raid or someone control or something like that.
Right.
You know, but I think LFR is a good stepping stone to Flex right now, especially the way Flex is tuned.
Colt, what do you think about that? I mean, as far as like the gearing stuff goes and kind of de-emphasizing LFR, are you okay with that, or is that working for you?
I dig it.
Okay.
I'll tell you that right now. I dig it, baby. Well, I went in there with my monk, did a little LFR.
Yeah.
Got like 3 drops. Well,
Awesome.
528s, you know? So I'm digging it, man. The higher eye level, the more loot.
Right.
What
I'm
kind
digging
of
it,
roll hacks are you using? Because I need
That would be
right.
3 bags of gold for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was shocked, trust me, that I got gear. I was shocked.
What's your monk's name again?
Oh, I think it
Don't
went
play the sounder.
It goes by the name of Wakfu.
Wakfu! Yeah, I had to set you up for that one.
Yes,
we have been really light in the sounder
We have, I
category
apologize.
this episode, so that's all right. I do think that that this time around, especially with Flex, it has meant that I know that as a normal raider myself, I have not stepped into LFR. I haven't done it. There's no need for me because all the gear would just be kind of like a side grade for me, if that. And so going into Flex and doing that and practicing mechanics and then going into normals and for raid night, that's actually working out really, really well. And Affinity, I don't know how much you guys were doing LFR before this tier. Were you doing it at all?
The last time that we had to actually seriously do LFR was probably when it was introduced in Dragon Soul. Like, we ran that a whole bunch of times.
Gotcha.
I think they've done a good job of emphasizing, you know, Flex is a new difficulty. We want you to be doing the new difficulty so that it doesn't look like we wasted our time on something the game doesn't need. And I don't know. The issue with LFR is if the item level is too high, then top-end raiders are going to go back in there and try and get that trinket or that 4th piece for your set bonus or something like that.
Sure.
So making it low enough to the point where we don't want to do that is fine, because that really kind of emphasizes that LFR isn't the intended thing for players like us or for people that are capable of doing Flex because they already have the gear to do it. They don't necessarily intend for you to go into LFR if you can do Flex. So I think they did good there in separating the item levels enough to that extent. There's also a secondary motive for them to be doing the things that they're doing with item levels, I feel. Okay. In regards to 32-bit limitations and trying to force the item level squish on us. So I think that is also another factor as to why the item level gap is so large in the gear.
Right. Because they're getting ready for the squish?
Well, remember last expansion, Ghostcrawler said, we want to do the item level squish, but nobody else wants us to do it, so we don't want to do it yet because you guys aren't asking for it. Well, now it's gotten to the point where they kind of go, well, our hands are tied. We kind of have no choice.
Right.
Like,
well,
because they don't.
And I think Ghostcrawler even said that initially. He's like, we could probably go this time without an item level squish, but I think one more expansion and we kind of have to. We're kind of stuck.
Right.
And so now they're talking about it more, and they're talking about it publicly more. Well,
here's this for you.
Yeah.
In Cataclysm, your starting item level for epics, or even if you count the blues, was 346. You ended the expansion with the highest item level of 416. Okay, we started this expansion at 463 with 2 of 2 upgraded, excluding your legendary cloak, was 580. It's pretty big.
Wow.
And I mean that kind of ties into Thok is the first boss, I want to say, was the first boss that had to heal. And the reason why that the boss healed after every transition was because they wanted to buff the HP to make the fight harder, but there's a 32-bit limitation to where they cannot buff it beyond that number without the boss healing. It's another reason why Garrosh, every time you do an intermission phase, he heals. It's why he heals up to 60% in phase 4. That's why he starts at a different HP value in phase 1, and then he heals up to 100% of another value. So basically with the item level scaling up, the amount of damage people are doing, the amount of health people have, the amount of health that bosses have, they were really able to showcase with the last couple of bosses in this expansion of, we need the item level squish now. And that was really the only way that they're able to do it, was to make such a huge gap in your item levels.
Wow.
32-bit what? Are you talking about Nintendo games? Like, what are you talking about?
Okay, so the 32, I'm not totally familiar with it, but it's the 30. It's just the coding language essentially. I want to say the numbers like 2132. I don't know. I'm not a numbers person as far as programming is concerned, but I do know that we have hit that limitation, and if they don't do it, then every single boss is going to heal for a metric fuck ton every time you do a boss.
Oh, now.
Let's bleep that.
Yeah, we'll have to bleep that later. We'll bleep
the
that.
most you can have in the 32-bit, the highest energy you can have in 32-bit without doing some funky math is 2,147,000,000. So if you go, I mean, a lot of the bosses we're seeing now have 1 billion health easily.
Wow.
So Garrosh probably would have gone past this.
Right. Right.
Are you talking about we got to do this item squish because of boss health?
Because of everything, because of number limitations in the game. You can only have so many numbers until the computer goes, you know what? Nope, not going to do it.
Okay, so, I mean, you're saying the number was like 2 whatever.
2 billion, yeah.
Right, so Paragons of the Klaxi ended up, I think we added it up, and it ended up being between all of the boss health of like the 9 guys that you kill, it ended up being something like 3.3 billion. So it's well above and beyond that number based on their wonky way of doing a really poor execution of a council-based encounter.
Right.
Wow. I got to tell you, this is blowing my mind. You want to know why? Because this whole time, the public, we've been talking about this item level squish is because we don't want to see like you hit for 1 million damage, in these giant numbers.
They simplified it, yeah. They simplified it by saying, that they were using, the commas as an example. When they were trying to say, 100,000 versus like 100, it's still the same idea because you're still doing the same percentage. And they oversimplified what exactly it meant when they probably should have been a little bit more like, here's what it means.
Right.
If they don't talk about an item level squish at BlizzCon, I would be surprised.
The thing is, they're trying to sell it to you, and they're not gonna sell it to you in that, hey, we have to do the squish because we can't have bosses have more than 2 billion health, because you're not gonna care. You'd be like, good, make them have 1 health. I want to kill them quicker.
Yeah, more loot, man. Come on, let's go.
When they say you're not gonna be able to crit above 2 billion, you'll be like, what? I need to be able to crit 3 million or 3 billion. Come on. So
wow, I'm gonna need one of you guys to like reset the breaker on my brain here. This is I'm shutting down.
It still blows my mind that our paladin tank essentially has more HP than Ragnaros did in Vanilla WoW. That's still just right over the head.
Right.
Louise.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be kind of weird. I'm really hoping that they do kind of bring up stuff like this at BlizzCon, so that they can kind of bring it out a little bit more, because I don't think that has ever been really out there.
Well, they'll have to, because they can't just kind of be like, here's a new expansion, you have 10 HP. Like, they can't just do that. So if they don't start talking about it soon, like pre-BlizzCon, and then add BlizzCon on top of it and making it a huge focal point for the next World of Warcraft expansion, then I would be surprised. But it all comes down to this game is old.
Right.
And you need to fix old stuff because things aren't done that way anymore.
My prediction, next expansion, they reset the game, everyone goes back to vanilla.
Everyone, they're going to do what they did with Hearthstone, and they're just going to wipe all the data.
Yep.
And then they're just going to
be
say,
like, look, we can go for another 9 years.
Redo.
Yeah, let's go back to vanilla, everybody.
You know, like we've already got our roadmap. We're good. We don't even have to do work for 9 years.
Exactly. And then
Onyxia attunement, anybody?
And then and then Coltrane can go back to making water for an hour before raid time.
Absolutely.
Like,
a 6-hour core run at least.
Guys, we introduced attunement to the game. It's this great new way to experience content. And
You're gonna would love that. There's a lot of diehard like vanilla was the best and Blizzard has ruined World of Warcraft.
Right.
So,
They'd be the first ones to quit if we went back to vanilla.
yeah, you know what? You're right.
Yeah, vanilla was.
there's not enough of them.
Sucks. I want the old WoW back.
Well, that's interesting what you're saying about this item squish, because there's rumors going around that in the next patch, this is before the end of this expansion, they might introduce this item squish. And we were talking about on the show several weeks ago, wouldn't it be better if the new expansion started with the item squish? But it's interesting what you're saying, Affinity. Maybe it would be better in a kind of a pre-patch.
They've done that with other things. They did it. They did that with class changes and you know, when hunters went off of mana.
Right.
I think they did that.
That's how they always do it, though. They always introduce like the pre-features to the new expansion that way. Like they don't give you the new content or access to the new levels, but they give you access to all of the new class changes that you're going to be going into. So that way, when you get into a new expansion, you can enjoy a new expansion rather than being completely overwhelmed with all these massive changes. So if they would have to, I mean, they don't have to, but it would make sense for them to introduce that with the 6.0 patch.
Right.
Yeah, and it also it freshens up the game too. You know, it freshens it up.
They want you to get experience with something because you've been farming content for the last 6 months. You know your class, so when they give you something new, they want you to be able to use that in the farm content and get used to it, so that when they give you even more stuff in the new expansion, you're not totally overwhelmed.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, speaking of overload here, I have one last story. And it's kind of weird, this has to do with our friends over at Guildox. They announced a new thing over there, where they're doing flex raid progress rankings.
What?
Whoa!
Apparently, they've decided to do flex raid progress over at Guildox.
Why?
I don't know. I'm wondering this myself.
Why?
Nothing against the guys at Guildox, but I think this is just a way for them to try to differentiate themselves from WoW progress, and it is a reach.
But yeah, I mean,
Flex isn't there for ranking. Flex is there for fun.
Right.
And Flex is gated.
Right.
The only thing you can be right now is 11 of 14. No one can be past that.
Right. Right.
Well, they're number one. I'll tell you that.
They did it first. They logged in first.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly. They logged in first, so they did. But one of the interesting things that came out of them with that announcement was that they said that their data tells them that 64% of guilds have rated the Siege of Orgrimmar on normal mode. Those guys have also completed kills in flex mode. That's kind of cool. That means that people are really using this new content, right? So that's what, as far as the article goes, I have no idea why they decided to do that. As far as like do flex raid progress. That makes no sense.
Weird.
It's very strange.
Because flex raid teams can change, and it's
Right.
like, well,
And
this one did it with 14, but this one did it with 23.
And you
so
can do it
therefore-
cross realm, and you can do it. I mean, like all this stupid stuff. So it's like, what? I don't get it.
It's weird.
But I'm happy to know that 64% of guilds are doing stuff with flex mode.
That's good. That's a Blizzard. That's a Blizzard number wants to see.
Yeah,
That's
for
a-
sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's a number Blizzard wants to see.
it'll be interesting to see to hear what the numbers are looking like from the developers' angle when we get into BlizzCon. I'm sure that they're going to be talking about it. I mean, they'll have to, right? So it'll be cool. I think. Anything else on news this week for you guys? Any other comments?
I have a final question for Affinity, but
Oh,
we
yeah,
can
yeah.
wait till the end.
Okay, all right, we'll do that.
Good. I'm gonna take an intermission for a second. I'll be right back.
Yeah, go for it.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
But let's jump into mail while he's taking a little bit of a break. Here, we'll just jump right in.
We've got mail.
We do, and if you have a question about anything for us, about rating or anything else, just let us know. We'll try to answer it on the show. You can always email us at converttoraid@gmail.com, or you can call our raid line, 612-787-RAID, or join us during the live show. PM one of the guys. We'll see if we can get to it. Now, Coltrane, can you do this? Help me out with this first one here.
Sure, this is from Josh. He says, "Greetings, CTR. I love the show and the idea of community and friendship that the guild seems to bring. And what I'm really looking to do is join a large social guild that caters to both casuals and raiders with an emphasis on community. I thought about coming over to Airy Peak, but only have 2 issues. 1, I'm a Horde player at heart, and I want to play Horde. Number 2, that's a problem.
Yeah.
I have 7 tunes over here that I can't afford to faction and server transfer. That's when I got into my head to message you guys and see if you might be open to the idea of starting a Convert to Raid guild on the Horde side over here on Area 52.
Yeah.
What do you think? Thank you so much for your time."
And we get this question from time to time.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we've answered it maybe a couple of times. And it's just really tough. One of the things about community is that you really need to bring people together. And if you have choices for them, you start to lose people. You actually start to, that's kind of what I've seen happen. As soon as you give people choices, they start to not be around anymore because they're doing the new thing, or they're doing the other choice that not everybody's doing. And especially when you divide it up along servers and factions and everything else, it gets so crazy, right? I mean, it's not good.
It's hard for us to manage CTR on Airy Peak. It would be impossible for us to manage it on other servers.
Right. Plus, I mean, we play on Airy Peak. Our tunes are over there. That's where our home is now. So it's kind of tough, right, Cole?
And you wouldn't get the same experience if you were on Area 52 in the CTR guild and there were only 50 people in the guild. You're not going to have Green Wall. You're not going to have any of that community that's over there.
It's tough.
That's what it's all about, unfortunately.
It's tough.
Or not unfortunately, but unfortunately that you can't come over because that's where it is.
Yep.
Yeah, I hear you, though. I know faction, it does. It costs money, man. I've faction changed and transferred, I think, 11 tunes, onto Airy Peak.
Oh,
so
man.
I hear you, brother. It's pricey, and it adds up quick. But yeah, you're right. If you spread everybody out, then you lose that sense of community.
Yep.
And that's what it's all about. Being on Airy Peak and everybody in the guild, everyone's interacting with each other. The CTR LFG is going great. So it's just that's kind of where we are. So I know it's Alliance, and that was the big announcement when we made the switch. We're going Alliance,
And then everybody freaked out.
Exactly.
No, but it's tough. I mean, if we could have everybody in our guild, that would be great. I would absolutely do it. If we could have our friends from Europe over here or whatever, we'd definitely do it. But there are limitations within the game. We had to make some tough choices. And those were 2 of the choices: what server and what faction.
Right.
Blizzard just needs to listen. And in the next expansion, there are no more guilds. Everybody is in Convert to Raid.
Yeah,
There it is. Perfect.
that'd be great.
Good
That'd
to
be
go.
great. That'd be great. And I know that we're running behind, so I think that's going to probably have to do it for today. Did you want to ask your question now, or did you?
I'd like to, but instead of Affinity, there's a cat sitting on a chair.
Yes.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, he is there. Okay.
Oh, he is there. My last question for you, Affinity, is this expansion in general, from beginning to end, Blood Legion, yourself personally, how has the rating been in Mists of Pandaria compared to earlier expansions?
I definitely would say it's been a solid expansion rating wise. There's been quirks outside of rating that I haven't been too happy with. Coin farming, dailies, rep, things like that.
Right.
I think the raid content as a whole for the entire expansion was really solid. I feel like, okay, in the past we've said we don't have enough bosses. 6 or 7 isn't enough. 14 to me is too many. I would rather have 10, 11, 12 bosses, solid bosses, rather than having 14 bosses where the first 10 you one-shot. So there's ways that they can improve it. I think Flex is a good start for that, because now hopefully they'll be able to take the 4 different difficulties and go, LFR is your introduction, Flex is for your kind of like casual, we don't have a full raid, we just want to kind of play with 12 people type thing. And then Heroic can hopefully really be there for the heroic oriented guilds, and I think they've got the groundwork in to do some pretty awesome stuff as far as differentiating what everything really means in that specific category. So overall, I would say it was a great expansion.
Cool.
It's great.
Cool. All right.
Excellent.
Well, with that, we should probably just get to 5-star reviews. What do you say? And we should give a little shout out. Right, Darius? Who do we have this week?
We've got Canopia, The Tank version 2, and Yoheezy.
Yoheezy.
Okay.
I don't know. Yoheezy. It sounds like something you would say to your friend. Yoheezy. Your friend's name is Heezy. I don't know. Any shout-outs this week?
My fortune cookies are bad. Are you kidding me? Yoheezy.
Yoheezy! Get over here.
I got a shout out to Cammy, the priest from Kel'Thuzad. I was in LFR on my monk, and Cammy messaged me and said loves the show and really appreciates everything we're doing. So big shout out to Cammy.
Hey!
I had a few instances of that this past week as well.
Cool.
So I wish I had remembered their names. I'm so sorry. I'm the worst.
I'm the worst. I just ignore people when they say stuff like that.
No, really friendly. They recognized me, and then I forgot to write it down.
Oh. I always hate it when that happens. But thank you so much for rating the show. Thank you for your questions this week, and I know that we didn't get to a couple of them. But please feel free to join in on every single conversation we're having at any time, and you can do that real easy. But first, you gotta bail on the old music.
You're gonna just bail out?
Yep, gonna bail out. Just
bail on that.
Bail on that one. And I'm gonna play this one, the smooth one. Yeah. Now you can email us at convertraid@gmail.com. You can call us and leave comments and questions on our raid line. That's 612-787-RAID or 7243. If you can't spell raid, 7243. You can follow us on Twitter at ConvertToRaid, or what are those individuals there, Coltrane?
You can follow Pat Crane at Pat Crane. You can follow Coltrane at _Coltrane. You can follow Darius at BoredMind. And Affinity, where can we follow you?
You can find me at Affinity BL.
Yeah, Affinity BL on the Twitter, and also on Twitch, right?
Yeah. Same thing.
Yeah. And are you going to be streaming soon?
I'm not streaming as much as I used to, but I'll definitely be streaming re-clears Tuesdays, Wednesdays, however long those take. So, there's gonna be that.
Sounds good.
We should probably stop calling Twitter the tweeters, because last week a whole bunch of people invested stock in Twitter.
Yeah.
Because they thought Twitter had gone public already, and Twitter stock went up something like 300%.
Oh my gosh.
And that's why I always called it the Tweeter and not just Tweeter. But yeah. All right, we'll go back to Twitter then.
I just invested in World of Warcraft, WOR craft. It's gonna pay off.
There we go.
Should be good. That's the movie. That's the stock.
Oh.
And if you want more information, you can always go to our website, the brand new website, over at convertraid.com. It looks great over there. We've got show downloads, forums, tons of links for Raiders, and so much more. It's all over at the new convertraid.com. Our show is available on Stitcher, the BlackBerry Podcast Directory, iTunes, all sorts of different places like that. And the Convert to Raid podcast is produced and distributed by Signals Media. Make sure to check out all of our friends, please do, over at signalsmedia.com, and they are all a part of the Signals Media All-Star Network. That's going to be it for the show. Hope you had a good time. Affinity, thank you so much for coming today. It's been great having you. Great getting your insights as always. And I will give you the big applause. There we go. Affinity. And a big
Man who truly raids in his robe.
That's right. He does. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We'll see you on our next show next week at our regular time, Sunday, 11 a.m. Central. And for all the guys that Convert to Raid, bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Go Sox.
Bye.
Shave your beard.
Yeah, shave your beard.